Hey everyone, it's Chris. Today I'm going to be doing a little video review on the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. It is Divergent, Insurgent, and Allegiant. I picked Divergent up in November last year, and I liked it enough to ask for the second two books for Christmas, and I just finished reading them last week. I meant to do the review right after I finished reading them, but kind of got distracted, so I'm doing it now. Before I get into the actual review, I wanted to let you know that this is not a spoiler-free review. There's going to be plenty of spoilers. I'm going to be talking about all three books, including the ending, because there's a lot of stuff I need to say about a lot of different things, and there's just no way to do that without spoiling stuff. So if you have not read the entire series and you don't want anything to be spoiled, then just stop watching right now. I also want to give you an idea of what the temperature of this review is going to be, like where I stand before you start watching everything I'm saying. So to do that, I'm going to let you know that I gave Divergent and Insurgent 3 stars and Allegiant 2 stars. Now, not everything in this series to me was bad. It definitely wasn't bad. It wasn't great for me. I did not dislike it. And before I get into any of the criticisms and problems that I have with the book, I'm going to say a few things that I liked about it. For one, it was definitely entertaining. It was fun. It was fast-paced. Veronica Roth is definitely talented. She knows what she's doing with pacing, and that's really great. I feel like, for the most part, with some exceptions, which I'll go into later, and mostly in the first two books, she has a pretty good grasp of her characters. She has a very good idea of where her characters should go in their personalities, and they develop pretty well for the most part. Her writing style is pretty good. I liked it. And overall, I wasn't bored at all reading the books, and that's a really great thing, to not be bored when you're reading a book. That's something that definitely should be accounted for in this review, and I definitely admit that I did not have a problem getting through all the books. And now I'll try to get into some of the problems that I had with the series as a whole. I'll try to start with Divergent, then go into Insurgent, then Allegiant, although I'll have to mention certain things that happen throughout the entire series at the same time. And now I'll try to get into some of the problems that I had with the series as a whole. I'll try to start with Divergent, then go into Insurgent, then Allegiant, although I'll have to mention certain things that happen throughout the entire series at the same time. The first thing that I have to say is that while Divergent is kind of like harmless fun, it's definitely cheesy sometimes, and just it's very unbelievable, and that's something I had a hard time getting past. The society that is in this book is just so ridiculous at times that it's kind of funny. I mean, I understand that it's a dystopian book, and that's fine, but there's a huge difference between dystopian and completely just dysfunctional. And I'll give a little bit of an example, a popular example, for like the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games, the world and the society within the Hunger Games is something that I can understand, something that I believed was possible. The way the districts behave, the way the capital behaves, the way their president behaves, the way that the uprising comes about in that society's history makes sense. And the whole reality TV show thing, the actual Hunger Games themselves, those all make sense, and those all seem believable to me. There is a point in which I believe our society actually could get to that in the future, and that's what makes a dystopian so freaky, is believing that our society can actually get to that point. And Suzanne Collins didn't try to explain her world in ways that were just really unrealistic. It was very much grounded in that space and time, and Veronica Roth spends way too much time, especially towards the end, making this seem like, oh, this is in Chicago, and oh, the United States government is involved, and it's supposed to be grounded in a reality that already exists, and there's just no possible way that the society that exists in Divergent could ever exist, because it just doesn't make any sense. The factions in Divergent are just so silly, and there's just no way our society could ever get to the point where we have those factions. And then at the end of Allegiant, we're just given this pseudo-scientifical reason why we're at this point in society, and it's completely unbelievable. I mean, the whole genetic purity thing and the purity war and all the stuff with the United States government, and it's just not at all believable. I was willing to suspend my disbelief though, so I could enjoy the book, because like I said, it is entertaining enough to do that. I do understand the factions and why she chose them the way she did, why she gave them the traits they have, and why the factions are built the way they are for the most part. There's just a few problems I have with them outside of the believability thing. I mean, I guess even as part of the believability thing, like for example, Candor is just completely useless and does absolutely nothing for the society whatsoever. I actually like that Jeannie Matthews kind of points that out at one point, and I applaud Veronica Roth for realizing that Candor is absolutely useless. And there's absolutely no way that when creating the society they would have given Abdignation all of the power in government. That just makes absolutely no sense. Giving one faction all the power was doomed to fail no matter what. I mean, take for example at the end of Insurgent and the beginning of Allegiant, when the factionless take control and the people that like the factions immediately rebel against the factionless because the factionless are the only ones with the power. That would have happened against the Abdignation from the beginning, just like it happened to the factionless against the people who wanted the factions back. There was just absolutely no way that that society would have ever thrived. It was doomed to fail from the beginning, and there's just absolutely no way it could have existed the way it did for however long it did. And then the factionless, even from the beginning, seems like the best option to me, no matter how you look at it. I mean, the fact that their society treats the factionless like they're this worthless thing that no one wants to be is just completely silly, even by their society's standards. I mean, yeah, let's just forget all the people that we ever loved and join a new faction, and we can't ever talk to the new people again, and the people that don't get initiated get factionless and they can never speak to their families again. No one will care about them ever again. I mean, I completely understand that that's just how it is in this world, and that's fine and everything, that people put faction before blood, but the reasoning behind that is just really, really dumb, and just, like I said, completely doomed to fail. And not anyone, not even Triss or Tobias, can ever see that. They don't ever see that until, like, the end. And speaking of Triss is extremely unlikable. She judges literally everyone for absolutely no reason because she suddenly sees herself as this big, dauntless badass. I understand that's probably because she's insecure about herself, and that's fine, but Veronica Roth goes to these extreme lengths to prove that Triss is always the one that's right, despite the fact that she's just judging everyone, and most of the time she should be wrong about those people. For example, Al. Al was very upset that he had to leave his faction. He missed his family, and he showed emotions about it, and Triss, like, judged him like he was this little crybaby that should just suck it up, and she's entitled to be a judgmental person and everything because she's insecure about herself. But then Veronica Roth takes it to the next level by turning Al into this, like, evil character that joins in with Peter, and, like, they all try to kill Triss, and that's just so completely out of Al's character. It actually made me angry. That's one of the instances where I thought Veronica Roth completely threw away a good character just for the sake of proving a really terrible point about what Triss thought about Al. And then Triss thinks all these judgmental things about Al after he kills himself because, gasp, he actually showed emotion. And it seemed like it was really just written to be an affirmation that Triss is always right about people, and we're supposed to see all of the judgmental things that she sees. And I just thought that was really unfortunate. And I mean, she is supposed to be the divergent person, and yet she buys into the factions more than anybody else in the book. I mean, she's supposed to have this power of thinking that never actually comes through in the first book, at least. And she's just this cold and silly person for seemingly no reason. I mean, she kind of got better as the story went on for me. Not necessarily because she became a better person or a better character, mostly just because I got used to her, I think. And then the whole Dauntless initiation thing was just really, really tedious. I mean, yeah, it was entertaining, but there was just a lot of repetitive stuff going on. And then the whole train thing made absolutely no sense. Like, where are these trains coming from? Why is there just a random train going by every single time a Dauntless person seems to need them? Who is running the train? Why are they running the train? What is the train for? And just why are they always there to be jumped on and jumped off for no apparent reason? And it just seems like Veronica Roth needed some badass thing for them to do, and they jump on and off trains. Like, okay, I get it. Don't need to do that every 5 seconds in the book. And then there's Tobias, who Triss literally knows nothing about, and then just suddenly, like, falls in love with because he's so physically attractive and so brooding and mysterious or whatever, and he is this, like, really abusive, really kind of screwed up person who just humiliates her in public because it's what's good for her or whatever, and because he's dauntless, you know. But then he just happens to be this, like, tough but gentle and soft person with this misunderstood story and back history and this side that only Triss gets to see ever. And it's just really cheesy, and I don't want to have to say so many bad things about him because I feel like he could have been a really good character if he wasn't so cookie cutter most of the time. At least in the first book he was. He just seemed like he was just eye candy for Triss. Just this big ball of cliche for her to uselessly fall in love with. And then I'll skip to the ending of Divergent, where for some reason Triss decides to shoot Will, even though she kind of like just disarmed someone by shooting them in the foot or something. Like someone else that was like a bad guy. She just shot them in the foot and that was fine, and she was able to get away. And then suddenly she was in the same situation and she decided to shoot Will in the head, even though he was her friend. And the perfect way to resolve that issue for me would have just been to not have that first encounter with that other person. We wouldn't have seen her shoot that person in the foot, and then later when she has that thing with Will, when she shoots him in the head, it would have been more believable that she would have done something like that in that situation. I mean, yes, there was just a lot of problems, but like I said, it was entertaining enough and interesting enough for me to want to read what happened next in the story. And at first I was thinking that I honestly liked Insurgent more than Divergent. Although looking back now, I'm not completely sure why. Not a whole lot happens in Insurgent. It's kind of repetitive, kind of drags on a bit, and Triss and Tobias' relationship is just ridiculously drawn out for no reason. There's just so much drama between them that was just really unnecessary most of the time. Although I did really like how a lot of characters in Insurgent were developed in a really nice way. Most of them were developed in a really nice way, and I really like seeing that. I really like seeing the new connections that were being made between people, and the new things that were happening to people that we hadn't seen happen in Divergent, and that was nice to see. Except for Triss, who, yes, she's Divergent, but in the reality of things, that basically just means she's a normal person who has like a normal personality that isn't defined by this one thing. And yet, that doesn't mean that her personality needs to change constantly. I mean, she has different views on things, different like personality traits that she goes off of and everything, but at the same time, everybody has a personality that is overlying themselves. But Triss just seems like she just constantly changed her personality for every situation. Like what she wanted and what she thought people should do weren't just opposing viewpoints. It seemed like her personality shifted every single time she had to make a decision, and that whole thing just needed a little bit of tweaking to make it more believable and make her more of a realistic character. I like how the two like really influential and powerful people that are kind of leading everyone else are these two really strong women, Jeannie Matthews and Evelyn. I really don't like how Jeannie was just killed out of nowhere for no apparent reason. Like, there was just not really much of a fight. I mean, Tori like stabbed her or something, and I mean there's kind of like a little thing between Tori and Triss, but Jeannie was just so easy to kill. It just seemed kind of pointless that she died so quickly and so easily. Like, why didn't anyone just do that already? The ending of Insurgent seemed right, though. I mean, it was really the only thing that could move the series forward into the conclusion, was to have them go outside the fence and all that. So on to Allegiance, which I probably have some of the most critical things to say about. To begin with, the whole switching between Triss and Tobias' point of view thing, that was just no, it didn't work at all. The second I saw that, I was just like, okay, Triss is gonna die. It's just not something that you should do in the last book of the series when it hasn't happened at all in the rest of the series. It's just really jarring and really unnecessary and just bad writing. And I mean, I actually have a solution for that problem, although it's obviously way too late. The entire series should have been written switching points of view between Tobias and Triss. That would have been really interesting, because we could have seen Tobias's points of view and perspectives from the beginning. We could get his backstory from him and not as he tries to explain it to Triss. I mean, we could see it in his mind. We could see how he deals with being Divergent. It would just make him more of a character in the first book. And then we'd see Triss from a different perspective. We'd see Triss outside of Triss, and that would make her a better character as well. And that could have made their relationship a lot less cliche if it had been done in the right way, if Tobias had his own distinct voice from Triss. And like I said, we could just see how Tobias deals with things. We could see how he deals with his divergence, and then later on in Allegiant, when we find out that he's not Divergent, we could see some shift in his personality, something that happens within him that kind of showcases the way he feels about finding out that he's no longer this special Divergent person. And it just would have given Roth the opportunity to understand Tobias as a character more before she randomly decided to switch to his perspective in the last book, which sounds absolutely nothing like the Tobias from the other books. And all in all, it was just like a huge cop-out for me. Veronica Roth realized that things were going to happen, important things were going to happen without Triss around, and either that or Triss was going to die, or both. and she realized that she needed to move the story along without Tris there, and that's just a cop-out, I'm sorry. And then the entire book is just filled with backpedaling, trying to explain stuff in a really unrealistic, really trying to be scientific way that just doesn't check out. And then they just add all of these conflicts on top of the other conflicts that we already have. I mean, first it was faction versus faction, and then it was faction versus factionless, and then in Allegiant it becomes Chicago versus the government, and the genetically damaged versus the genetically pure, and it all just becomes really convoluted and really unnecessary and really cliche. The message that it's trying to send just becomes really overbearing, and it's all just really one big mess. All of the characters that are introduced in the third book are characters that are just feel rehashed from other characters that have been introduced in the series. David is just like a non-character. He doesn't even really have a personality. I really liked that Tris's mother was a part of the Bureau before she got sent into Chicago, and that she and David had this thing that nothing was ever answered with that. It just left more questions that were just thrown away for no reason, and it was just really disappointing. And then they get into this weird debate over whether it's evil or good or bad or whatever to erase people's memories, and then it's all okay when Tris wants to erase these certain people's memories, but it's not okay when the other side wants to erase people's memories, and everybody just follows Tris blindly and that side blindly, and that just adds another conflict that just makes everything even more messy. And then the end is just so anticlimactic, like Evelyn just suddenly decides to give up because Tobias just asks her nicely, and why didn't he just do that in the first place? If she was that easy to convince, why didn't he just do that in the first place? It just makes no sense. Why are all these leaders that have all these power built up around them just go down so easily? And then Tris's death was just completely unnecessary, even though I didn't really care that she died. I'm just saying it was unnecessary. I read Veronica Roth's blog post about why she explained why she felt that it was necessary, and I don't think it was necessary. Tris actively decided to go into the death serum. That means she decided to sacrifice herself for other people for all the right reasons. She made the effort to sacrifice herself for her brother and everybody else. And that was enough. That was enough to prove she was willing to sacrifice herself, and she made it through the death serum, and it's never explained why that happened. That would have been a really interesting thing to find out why that happened later on. But then Tris just dies, and that just seems like a cop-out too, because David was just there with a gun, and he shoots her, and so we never get to find out why she survived the death serum, and David being there to shoot her was just really pointless, and her dying was just really pointless. And also people will think that Caleb should have been the one to go through the death serum and all that, and I actually am glad that he didn't. People that read books really want to see a character change from the beginning to the end, because I think they want to believe that they can change and that people around them can change into better people. But the truth is, sometimes people just don't change. A lot of times they do, they can, if they try hard enough, but that decision kind of showed that Caleb just wasn't able to, and that's realistic, that's okay. And I kind of like that, actually. Anyway, and then the rest of the end with Tobias's perspective was just all really boring and really lame. His voice was just bland and uninteresting. I mean, it could have been a lot better if we had been able to see Tobias's mind throughout the entirety of the series up until that point, and that would have been much better, but no, it was just not okay. Anyway, I know I've said a lot of really critical things. I hope I didn't sound too harsh at all, because I definitely didn't hate the series. I didn't even really dislike it. I just had problems with it, that's all. And obviously I had found enough to talk about for this review, so that definitely says something about it, I think. And it was entertaining. Like I said, I wasn't bored reading it, and it was a good read, and it's definitely a great jumping off point for Veronica Roth's career as a writer. I can definitely see her getting better and better as time goes on. Her execution of this idea was good, for the most part, but the idea itself just wasn't grounded enough. The idea itself just wasn't good enough. Her execution of the idea was probably the best she could have done, but the idea itself just had a lot of problems to begin with, and I think that's the whole problem with the series itself. And yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly willing to discuss anything I just said in the comments. Please leave a comment if you disagree or if you agree. If you have something to add, anything, I'm perfectly willing to listen to every argument, every opinion, and I would try to give my own opinion back, and we can have an actual discussion, and I would love that a lot. And I thank you so much for watching. I'm going to have lots more stuff coming up soon that I hope you enjoy, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later.